In 3, 2, 1.
Here we go. Welcome to the 101st episode of Silicon Zombies, where you will find the best brains from the Bay to beyond. We connect live with brilliant thinkers, innovators, and entrepreneurs to get them the right contacts and the right knowledge so they can get to the next level. So it's Tuesday, February 21. My name's Nick Larson, serial entrepreneur.
And I'm Peter Wang, brand manager brand community manager at Intel. And what did I say before?
It was something really clever, whatever it was.
Turned community.
There we go.
We spent so long trying to figure out the way we introduce ourselves because first impressions are everything.
We are in for a treat today at the beautiful Park James Hotel. So thank you so much for our sponsors. Speaking of our sponsors, Arturo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Very nice to meet you all. My name is Arturo Herrera. I am the CEO of Nikolaos, and we are proudly sponsors of Silicon Zombies podcast. We are usually based in Hermosillo, Mexico, but today I'm here in person. So what we do, we help companies to grow their software development teams with talent in Mexico. So actually, we just onboarded our newest client like 2 weeks ago. They are really happy because they are now having their development teams in the same time zone. They have their similar cultural affinity, and they have the option to be traveling back and forth between the US and Mexico in just like 3 or 4 hours. So any questions, the Nikolaos team is also here. There is Ricardo and Eduardo. So if you have any questions, just let us know, and we'll be very happy to attend you all. So thank you very much.
Awesome. That's Nikolaos.com. If you're going to be building any products, mobile or otherwise, definitely check out Nikolaos.com. In fact, they've done great work for Matt at Bazinta as well. So we are elated to have celebrated author, applied neuroscientist, and all around just wonderful human being, Dr. Niko Dimitriadis. Welcome, Niko.
Thank you.
We've got Human here too.
Thank you.
So let's start with the big picture, Dr. Niko. You've been in applied neuroscience for decades. You've studied over 8,000 brains. What's the deal? Is this only for the laboratory?
Absolutely not. I mean, this can be demonstrated with a simple. Can we have audience participation?
Please.
I don't know. Okay,
That's
good. Great. Ready? What is the brain for? No? I expect it. It's kind of a setup question, right?
Processing.
Everything. Wow, that's a big thing. What does the brain do? What is the output of the brain? Why do we have a brain? Now, you answer from a very human-centric approach, right? What you do as a human. But humans are not the only species that have brains. Many species have brains, which they might not, survive. That's a better answer, survive. How? What is the process by which we survive? What is the process, the function that the brain does that helps us survive? It's not thinking. It's not thinking. Thank you. If the brain only reacted, we would not be here today. It has to predict a bit. It's not only reacting, but indeed reacts, but it predicts as well. Any other? Good. It's close. What is a fight or a flight? What do I do when I fight? What do I do? I run. Good. The brain is about movement. Actually, that's the main thing that the brain does, is to generate the best movement within the circumstances of the challenge. Thinking is it's a byproduct, I would say, a secondary process that it's good when it is promoting the best movement. When it does, well, it creates many pathologies. So we have a brain because we move. How do we know this? Any ideas?
I don't know, but I know that monkeys don't ask questions, but we do. What's the separate? Yeah, exactly.
This is his way of putting me back into order.
No, we're having fun here.
That's good. No, I asked him to do this. It's fine.
Well, I don't know. Let's take a question from Human. Maybe. What do you think, Human?
You want me to answer that? You want me to answer what you just asked?
Let's do it.
What was the question again?
Oh, I'm glad he's paying attention. Wow.
Choose one.
Well, you know the question I want to ask, and I don't know if we're going to jump ahead too quickly. Should I wait on my question?
Oh, let's do it. Let's do it now.
I want to know the difference between the subconscious and the unconscious mind.
Anybody else that wants to raise of hands? Is it a popular question? Let's see.
It is. It's a very popular question.
Okay, so I belong to this group of people that we don't think that there is a subconscious. It's actually only unconscious. Subconscious as a concept is a rather outdated Freudian concept, which we don't anymore. So if you see all modern neuroscience, you will not find the word subconscious. You'll find the word only unconscious. Subconscious, according to Freud, was a very dark basement where everything that you wanted to do, but because social convention didn't allow you to do, you were suppressing there, and then they were coming to in the surface to haunt you in life.
We've progressed.
Yes, we did. As we always. So subconscious is a kind of outdated term. It's only unconscious now, because the unconscious is fantastic. Actually, it's not this dark basement that all the fears or the suppressed ideas go. Do you have any ideas how many bits per second our brain is processing? That's a good bit.
40,000.
1 to 8.
Probably.
It's a big distribution.
Consciously or unconsciously? Come on, now you've heard of. So the brain receives from the environment around 11 million bits of information per second. From the outside world. There is also inside world, which is much bigger. So how many of these you think appears in what you call conscious?
20.
But you're a fantastic audience. Between 2 and 60. So out of 11 million bits per second that the brain is receiving, just 2 to 60 is what you call conscious life. Where is the rest? And what is the role of the rest?
Right. And it takes us about 11 seconds to make an action after our brain makes a decision, right?
So, there is this long research, starts from a guy called Benjamin Libet from the 80s, where he measured the time that it takes for the brain to process information, especially to generate a decision between 2 alternatives.
Okay.
And he found back then that the brain takes a decision up to 2.5 seconds before you are aware of this decision. Now this research has taken this number back to 11 seconds. So the brain does a lot of processing under the hood, and what appears as consciousness is just a small part out of it. It's not the whole process.
So walk us through how it works. We sense external stimuli, we create knowledge, or we generate knowledge from that, and then we build like a model of a statistical likelihood or an outcome?
Absolutely. So look how vision works. This is fascinating when you first hear about this. So we look at the world, and you think you look what is out there. No, you don't look what is out there. You look what the brain has already processed and chose for you to see within 2 and 60. What happens with the rest 11 million bits per second? What happens with all of them? So you receive, for example, out of 11, by the way, 10 million is vision, right? It's the biggest chunk of information we receive. So the visual stimuli, okay, I walk down the street and there is a movement on the sidewalk that might be dangerous. The brain has already received this information, this visual cue, this visual evidence that something might be wrong. It goes to a part which is called the thalamus, which is the very center. Thalamus is the Greek for chamber, right? Yeah, a lot of Greek words today, sorry. So the thalamus, which is the chamber, receives this information before it appears in our consciousness, and then decides what this information is. Much faster than it appears to consciousness. So the thalamus will say, is it dangerous? Is it something very good? It goes for the extremes in the beginning. And then, based on the analysis that the thalamus will do, we'll then redistribute this information visual to our occipital lobe in the back of our head, which is our visual, which is the visual processing center. And then it will go visual processing center 1, still unconscious, not subconscious, unconscious. Okay, we learned this. Okay, second visual 2, and then visual 3, visual 4. It will appear on your conscious mind. So what we see with our conscious mind is late, is very limited, and it is already decided upon.
Wow.
And this is what we call reality.
So we learned a little bit about the brain, but we want to learn about Dr. Niko. Tell us about your background in neuroscience.
Okay.
What are your big takeaways? What have you learned?
So, okay, this is how many days do we have? Because I wrote a book, by the way, that. So. Wow, this is fantastic. This is fantastic.
It's so cheesy. I love it.
So the first thing that I learned through my journey in what is called applied neuroscience, because this is my field of expertise, applied neuroscience, Started with an accident that I have back in 1997. Now is the sound that you want. And the blurry picture. Bravo, that's it, right? Hollywood is not close, right? Is it close? So I had a car accident, and yeah, we have many of these in Greece, so don't worry, I'm not an exception. So what happened is that I was driving down the street. It is Saturday night, so you can imagine. And I'm with a friend, and something actually attracts my attention away from the road. Again, Saturday night, I'm not going to go into graphic details. And okay. So something attracts my attention away, and I was not going fast. 50 kilometers, you do that.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
30,
Okay, 30.
Okay.
So, and then from my peripheral vision, it takes me, I realized that there is an obstacle in the middle of the street, another car parked in the middle of the street. That's my excuse, okay?
Wow.
Parked in the middle. I'm not sure if it is an accurate memory, but to me it was in the middle.
It's your reality.
Yeah, it's my reality.
Yeah.
So I understand that there is no time to react, right? Because I'm looking there, and I realized I was young. So I realized that there is an obstacle there, and the moment I turn to face it, I black out. I have no recollection. I don't have a conscious experience of the actual hit. Now, I don't know. Was it minutes? Was it seconds? My bet is in seconds. I come back and I say, what happened? I realize I immediately, it's fantastic how social is our brains. The first thing that I do is I turn to the person next to me and say, are you okay? Okay, it was just, how many you said miles per hour? 30, yeah. So nothing but, okay, it was damage. We went out, etc. And this really made me think, who switched me off? What switched me off? It was not a conscious decision that, a collision is coming.
So you're not in control of your brain.
Absolutely. So, and who switched me back on? Again, no conscious decision. It's safe now. Come back on. So this was my, let's say, personal awakening that the brain actually controls everything, and I am, and that's my biggest enlightenment that neuroscience gave me, and the biggest realization that what I call me is a subsystem of the brain.
Wow. You mean like your personality or your conception?
My
itself?
conscious life, my perception, my thoughts are sub-process of the brain. That the brain is a much bigger. I'm part of it. I'm not a dualist like brain-mind. The mind is part of the brain, and we have even calculations. What is the percentage of your unconscious thinking versus your conscious process of the brain? How much of the 100% of brain processing you would say is conscious thinking versus unconscious thinking? Not subconscious, we said this already, okay? We'll have exam at the end of we'll have a test, we'll be ready to, okay.
I feel like 80-20.
So previously we thought that was 5% the conscious, but it is too big. John Bartz, one of the top experts we have on the unconscious, probably is around 99.4 of the unconscious. Really? It is just 0.6 the conscious, and it's not conscious and unconscious. Where is your conscious coming from? So actually your conscious thinking is a product of your unconscious. The unconscious comes first. If you want to remember something from tonight, apart from my name and my book, of course, and Silicon Zombies, and later you will find out about my last. Are we taking questions?
No, not yet.
Okay, not yet. Sorry.
We will in like 10-15 minutes. I have a question. Let's go back to the unconscious versus conscious.
Yes.
I need you to just brag about yourself a little bit. Can you tell everyone who you've consulted for? Some of the companies. I know Nike. I know IKEA. Who else?
So in Europe, because that's my first visit in the US, right? So in Europe, I worked with.
This is his first time in the United States, everybody.
Right.
First time ever.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much. It's such a warm welcome. Thank you so much. So most of the work that I have done the last 12 years in a field that it's called neuromarketing. It sounds scary in the beginning, but actually it makes sense later on. Bravo. The sound effects. Right. This time was on time. So neuromarketing, or you can call it consumer neuroscience. I worked with a lot of banks in Europe and in the Middle East as well, a lot of banks. Also a lot of FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods, but also telcos. I did a very big project for, I think, T-Mobile. You also have here T-Mobile. So all of this work in this, what is called consumer neuroscience, was to understand how the brain, not you, your brain, which you are part of, understands messages and experiences and decides upon them.
So when we were prepping for this interview,
Yeah.
you told us a really cool story
Right.
of a design.
Right.
And I'd like you to share that story and tell everybody what you went through and what you ultimately decided on so they can understand how you work with these big companies.
Right. So, and this is a sound bite. So the future is biometric. The future is biometric/neurometric, because the information that we get now for how the brain and the body perceives reality much faster and deeper, and with all these calculations that it does and produces decisions, is understanding really human nature, right? So how much would you say that if I ask you, let's say there is a bank, that was for a bank, and the bank wanted, actually one of the biggest European banks, one of the biggest French banks, wanted to redesign the experience of the branches, right? We still have branches, regardless of the mobile bank, there's still physical space. So how can I predict your behavior? What kind of ways, big strategic ways I have to predict what you will do tomorrow? I can do 3 things actually if you think about it. The first is to ask you, what would you do? Okay, yellow color, red color, which one do you, that's traditional marketing research.
Behavioral.
That's not
Or
because I ask you. It's cognitive, bravo. It's cognitive because I ask you.
Got it.
Now, I can ask you through a questionnaire. I can ask you through an interview. I can put smileys. It doesn't matter the way you give me the feedback. I ask your conscious part of the brain to react, right? So that's what it's called self-reporting, because you report about yourself. The other way that I could do it is I could do it behaviorally. Okay, I designed the one, I designed the other. It's like A/B testing, right? You know A/B testing, and then I see what would you do. This is actually behavioral psychology from the 40s and the 50s. If you've heard about Skinner and Pavlov with his dogs, that's actually a lot of online research now. You have A/B, and then you choose. And there's a third way to understand what you would do is by exposing you to different options and measuring your brain activity. So the unconscious, mostly, what it does. Which one of the 3 ways? Self-reporting, to ask you what you would do. Observing, because it's observation, right? Behavioral observation. Or neurometrics. Which of the 3 predicts better your behavior? What would you say? Since I'm here today, I hope, because I chose it as a career. And actually, statistics and research prove this. The saddest thing, or the most interesting thing, is that if I ask you about what you believe, what would you do, predicts your behavior the least. And there are studies that go low as 2.5% of your behavior, or 50, which is kind of luck, right? It's 50-50. But really asking you about yourself and what would you do predicts the least your behavior, which says a lot about the role of conscious and unconscious and all the other. And from the behavioral, I know behavioral is very popular because of online world, because we do a lot of behavior, we buy, we comment. It's very popular, but actually the most predictive is neuro. It predicts up to 91% of your behavior, which is really, and this is published data, it's not like anecdotal business data. So actually what we did for this bank, so this bank wanted to globally change the feel of their branches. And they had a couple of designs, and they did one design which was very flashy, a lot of colors, very strong. Really, if you drove down the street and you saw this facade, you'd say, that's fantastic, I can see it. And they did conscious-based research, focus groups, questionnaires. Even most executives in the bank chose this with strong colors, because it makes sense that if something is strong, it will stand out. And in this cacophony of stimuli in our everyday world, it would stand out. And the second option was almost the same, the colors representing the logo of the bank, but with a white frame in the middle that the entrance of the branch, the ATM, and the logo could be within this white frame. Okay, traditional research, self-reporting, what you think you would do, chose the flashy colors. But somebody in executive board in the bank intuitively said something is wrong. Even the CEO liked this flashy solution. So research and then this person in the executive board said, I don't feel, maybe let's do one more last study, neuro study this time. And it did, we proven the opposite. The best for the brain was the less flashy, the one that this white frame in the middle made the different important elements, which was the entrance, the ATM, and the logo to stand out. Actually, in all the metrics that we have to measure in what is called neuromarketing, this solution that looked less flashy actually made for the brain much more sense, and it helped the brain to navigate the stimuli, to understand which one is this bank, where is the damn entrance to go in. Okay.
Dr. Niko, where
Yes.
were they capturing those data points? Was it eye movement, or how did it work?
So in applied neuroscience, we use various tools to understand and to predict behavior. So eye tracking is absolutely one of these. Mm-hmm. And when I say eye tracking, you say, okay, but why do you use eye tracking? I know what I'm looking at. Okay. Do you know in how many locations per second your eye is moving around? So look at me, right? Let's do this. Let's do this experiment. You look at me, right? Please try not to move your eyes to this handsome person next to me. Just only to me. Okay. I'm trying to, he invited me, so I'm coming to you later. Don't worry. He's on the side and a little bit sad. Okay, don't worry.
It'd be nice.
Hey, he was in movies. He was in movies,
That's
right?
right. It's a celebrity
He's the movie guy. Okay. So actually, try to look at me for once, not at him. Okay, we will count down from 3 to 0. Please try not to move your eyes. Please do your best to these guys. Okay, are you looking? Am I more visible? Okay, all together we will count down from 3 to 0. Just look at me. Try not to look at me. This is how I attract attention. Okay, let's go. We will all count down together from 3 to 0. Let's start. Look at me. Don't take your eyes off of me. That's how I do it because nothing else works. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, 0. To how many places in the environment your eyes moved? Did you know? 5? No, which 5? Do you know where your eyes went? Okay. That's good. Anybody else? But consciously, now you will see why conscious thinking is limited, is late. Okay, so tell me, from your experience, your lived experience, the way that you perceive the world, how many places did you consciously process? Hey, it was a visual test, not an auditory one, so we'll come to sounds later on. Okay. So how many places did you remember, but please don't guess, how many places do you remember that your eyes moved to?
First of all, there is the focus. Your eye can focus on one thing, but it can use both peripheral and focal.
Correct, but what did you notice perceptually, in your perception of reality?
The perception was that my peripheral vision works fine.
But how many points would you say you noticed?
She's a doctor, by the way. So
That's fantastic.
I don't know if that counts.
Medical doctor?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. How many places, your focus of attention, I will make it more technical. Thank you. Perfect. Is it the same? Did you please follow my orders? Make me happy? Okay, what if I tell you that your eyeball moves to at least, I will sit down, not get too excited too early. Okay. After, with the drinks, with the bar. We have an open bar? No, open. Okay. Okay. For the speaker. For the guests.
Swing and a miss.
Close enough. So how many focal points for your brain to collect information per second? At least 5. At least 5 points per second your eyeball runs in order to collect important information for your well-being, regardless where you consciously focused. Because the consciousness comes into play so late, and it's so limited, 2 to 60 out of 11 million, right? That nature could not let our survival depend in what my conscious mind captures. It's too late, it's too limited. So the brain collects much more information in order to. So eye tracking actually is trying to understand what the brain sees, not what you see. You come late and limited.
But I want to know how the brain works.
Put me back to order, please. Yes.
If I
Difficult
was,
job today.
If I was nervous, which I'm not, what would be happening in my brain right now?
So every second, as I said, 11 million bits of information are coming in order for your brain. And what your poor brain is trying to do is try to keep Nikos in order, right? I mean, this is what he, and on point. That's a tough one. I told you.
That's okay.
Did you
Roll
watch
with the
my
punches.
videos before or not?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
I'm
Did you
prepared.
prepare? Okay.
If you're always ready, you never have to get ready.
So emotions, because that's the thing. Should we enter emotions? Are you sure? Okay. So emotions, now there are many ways of understanding emotion, but emotions are brain states for creating behavior out of a challenge. So in this way, you're challenged by me. Okay,
in a positive
right?
way.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So what your brain does is try to collect information, process it, and create the movement, so the behavior, that will achieve the best out of what's happening. If the brain feels that there is a distance between the desired outcome and the current, you call this fear. Fear, it's the in-between, that tries to find ways to reach the desired outcome, which is not the current one, which means you're not asking many questions. Right?
Well, I'm ready for another one. So, like, if
if
brains are communicating with each other, how does this function? Because like we can take it to the next level with Elon Musk and the neural link and understanding brains and computers together. How does this work?
First of all, this research has started from pathology, right? So you have people with either a damage in the brain or on the autistic spectrum that we have to understand how they connect with the world, how the brain processes information, and help them to achieve their goals in life, right? So from a neuroscientific perspective, it's very important to understand these processes and try to apply them in the people with the highest need.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay, so actually technology now plays a big role in helping us understand how the brain works better in order to help as many people as we can. Companies as well, and banks as well. I'm bringing myself back to the conversation.
Thank you. No, that's great.
Okay.
All right, so listen, you've been very patient. We're going to open this up to the audience. Sandra, come here.
You look at the, okay.
So just wave down Sandra. She's going to bring you the mic. We'll do one at a time.
Round of applause for my beautiful wife, by the way.
Woo!
We can go right here.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. I've heard that humans is like a rider on a horse, but the horse is in charge, but the horse has tricked the rider into thinking we're in charge. Can you comment about that?
Cool. That's a great question.
How long do I have?
2 minutes on each question.
So this comes from Plato. So Plato, millennia ago, said he tried to make an analogy of a metaphor of how the mind and the brain works with the two horses and the rider, okay, in the chariot. So the two horses and the logic being the person trying to control and lead the horses where they go. And the two horses, the one is good emotions, the other is bad emotions. So this is where it comes. But the most modern reincarnation of this is Joseph Ledoux, the rider, and the, sometimes we say horse or elephant. Okay, so this is a kind of dualistic approach because I'm trying to do my best, both me and other colleagues, not to separate rationality from emotions. I don't think this is the right way of understanding how the brain works. Actually, for me and the group that I represent in neuroscience, you have to think the emotions as the basis by which thinking arises. So it's not the one or the other. It's the one with the other. And emotions, if you see emotions as these basic mental and brain states that come between input and output, then based on your emotional state, different thoughts will come out. Okay, and please don't, when I say emotions, don't think about feelings. I'm not talking about feelings. So I'm not talking about the conscious experience of a feeling. I'm talking about the basic brain recalibration of how to react in a situation.
All
Great-
right.
great question.
Right behind you.
Great question. Yeah.
I'm going to leave the AI stuff for someone else. But my question is, with all this stimulus that we are seeing, especially with young brains in social media and constantly keeping the brain occupied with maybe important or not important things predominantly, what impact does this have on the brain and how we think?
So overflow of information, right? I mean, I guess you own one of these. How long do you spend your day on this?
Too much.
And not only you spend too much, you're scrolling all the time, so there is a huge amount of information that comes into our brain. Actually, there was a calculation, an estimation saying that a person 1,000 years ago, their brain received the same amount of information through the whole life that we receive today in one day.
Wow.
This is crazy. Because you might not be conscious of the amount of information, but everything that screams for your attention is actually competing with for the resources of your brain. So really we live in an era where our brain is struggling to keep up with the information that it is exposed to. Not attending to, attention is specific, but conscious attention especially, but whatever comes in the brain. And I think that we have a long way to go to try to manage it better. I mean, you have all watched The Social Dilemma, right, for example?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are very important things.
So let me follow up with her question, which is all the social media damaging our brains?
No, I'm not a Luddite. You know? You know Luddites? The Luddites, the people that...
Non-tech.
In the Industrial Revolution, they start breaking machines. No, I'm not a Luddite, and I think that I have a different approach, not only me, but many others, which is now social media is like wild, wild west, right? Everything goes. We will reach a point where we will have to, I don't know how this word sounds to you, but regulation. We have to introduce understanding. This is how innovation works. We create the innovation, we release it to the world, then we study to see the benefits and the damages, and then we try to recalibrate. And I think we are in this recalibrating moment. And I think as we go along and we see, I don't know if you know of Jonathan Haidt, a psychologist here, a very famous psychologist here in the US. He studies, actually he's the kind of expert of the impact of social media usage on the brain.
The happiness hypothesis?
Correct, yes.
I know that one.
Nice.
Correct.
10 points.
Yeah, that's what yes. So
we've got another question.
yes. So actually, I think that there is some time, and this is how humanity works. In the beginning, we're so excited for an innovation. We think that it is the best thing in the world. We we exhaust its benefits, but then we realize the costs and we recalibrate and we regulate.
Right. Go ahead.
So first of all, thank you very much for all the information that make me understand that I know very less about the brain. And yeah, my question is, if you say that finally we only have 1% of our conscious mind, right? How about this 99% of the unconscious, not subconscious, unconscious mind, that how we can use it? Or is there any possibility that we can use it beside the fact that we will be exploited by marketing? How we can actionably use it and exploit it ourselves? Thank you.
So this is a fantastic question. It is one of the first questions I received. So I think that we need to create a different narration, a different story about how the brain works. And I think we lived through I would say not just decades, but centuries of the conscious mind controlling the unconscious, and if it doesn't control it, it should learn how to control it better. Actually, this is biologically impossible, because the conscious mind is a product of the unconscious.
But what if we spend more time in nature? That must help.
So many things help about how the unconscious works. So what I would say is that instead of creating this mental picture of my conscious trying to, as the horse rider, to get that exactly, you should think of your conscious as a great help to the unconscious, not as the controller or the master. Actually, the conscious is not the master, it's the emissary. It's actually something that the unconscious is using to achieve its goals. And I think when we create this better symbiosis and acceptance of the role of consciousness, I'm not sure we're still there. There is a neuroscientist, Niko Zolino, he believes that it will take us around 100 to 200 years to really change our mental models of how, what really makes us human. But I think we are getting there. I think that one of the professions that is more stubborn in not allowing this unconscious to come first is economists. I don't know if we have any economists in the room, but economists are unfortunately, not all of them, of course, and I come from an economics background, so they're very stubborn to let go on this outdated model of how our brain works and makes decisions.
All right. Go ahead.
No, we don't take questions from economists, but after what I said.
Right,
Banned.
I'm pleased to tell you I'm not an economist.
Okay, cool. I'm pleased to accept your question.
Nicholas, thank you for your perspective.
Thank you.
I've been hypnotized a number of times in my life.
Okay.
And I have been the observer there, listening to myself speak, not being in control of those words and feeling like what's spewing out of me is an absolute truth. How can you call that unconscious versus subconscious?
So the idea of the subconscious that is Freudian mainly in nature is that, and the word says it, subconscious, subterranean. It's something below the surface, and it has also a negative connotation. It's like, as I said, a dark, damp basement that all the suppressed wishes and desires have to be pushed down because of social conventions. Civilization and its discontents, right? The Freudian book. The main thesis is to operate as a species, you have to suppress some of your urges. But these urges do not disappear. They go to the basement and then they appear. Okay, I'm simplifying, but that's maybe oversimplifying, but that's the major thing. And so modern neuroscience understands that the unconscious is this unbelievable evolved capacity of the brain to receive all this information from the outside world and the inside world and apply analytics, protocols, and many other things, either from evolution or learned, in order to produce the best outcome. Okay? This is why we call it the unconscious and not the subconscious. Unfortunately, the subconscious has a negative connotation by its inception. And this is why if you read all modern neuroscience, the word subconscious is not used anymore. It's the unconscious.
You mentioned a predicted outcome because it's almost like trying to predict the future. And in fact, that's what we're doing to some degree with the supply chain with Unity, Central, and Boardwalk. The founders are back here if you want to go say hi. And also, Huma, what are your thoughts here?
I'm processing.
Unfortunately, I have this effect.
Yeah, he does have this effect. Let's do another question.
Hi.
Yes.
So a comment and a question.
Yes.
So one comment, when you mentioned that you had the accident and you asked what shut me down, I would say the vagus nerve shut you down. Okay. It's not necessarily your brain. Your brain got an input from the vagus nerve, which is sometimes stronger than your brain, and shut it down completely. I want to talk about intuition.
It's a very good comment. Yeah. Thank you.
I want to talk about intuition.
Yes. Oh, perfect. One of my favorite topics.
Yes. And also, we haven't mentioned neuroplasticity. There's a lot of things that
absolutely
this topic encompasses, but
I think we have 3 more hours, right? So
I don't know, when is your flight?
Bring the booze.
So, how would you describe intuition? And
That's fantastic.
What are any new? What's the new research about intuition that you could share with the audience? Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. So there is a difference between gut reaction and gut feeling, right? So intuition is more gut feeling than gut reaction. Gut reaction is more of an automated reaction of the brain, the vagus nerve, and all the peripheral nervous system in order to apply an already existing protocol to deal with the situation. This is more gut reaction. Gut feeling is different. Gut feeling requires more processing. It's not so automatic, and it's not a learned, kind of behavior, but it is when something is happening, and you have an internal memo from your body that provides a fresh view of a situation, a pattern, if you want, a pattern, but logically and rationally, you don't have the whole information and the whole plot about it. So you kind of know without knowing. Actually, this is intuition, knowing without knowing. And I think this is an evidence for one of these wonderful things that the brain, and thank you for this. Usually we say brain, but it's not just the brain. The brain is the center, absolutely. So it's the brain, is the nervous system, and it works again. And it's the body, right? Yes, and it's the environment. So actually, bravo. So we talk actually about a three-part system, right? So it's brain, body, environment. That's the right way to talk about it. I mean, we focus on the brain because it's easy, but it's actually, we talk about a system, a three-part system. So intuition is one of the ways that the brain has to notify the system, the whole system, because we think that the brain is a holistic, fully synchronized system. It's not. It's a mess. It's a jungle in there. Actually, it's a jungle. It has all these systems that actually fight between themselves to take over our behavior. That's actually the best way to see the brain. It's not, okay, let's all come together and in union and harmony decide. That's not the brain. The brain is like a board of directors that hate each other. Okay, they do collaborate in groups. So there is some lobbying. And in the end, there is some decision coming depending on voting power. So actually, intuition is some parts of the brain trying to say something to the other parts of the brain in order to make the whole system react. This is a better, I think, metaphor to understand what's happening.
Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, exactly, Blink, where he was talking to a marriage counselor who had been practicing for decades, and within the course of a few seconds had a really high statistical likelihood of whether or not they were going to stay together. And I guess that was based on microaggressions. Maybe the husband would make a stupid joke and the wife winces and then recovers, but he was able to detect these things. Is that kind of like what you're talking about, like a gut instinct?
I mean, think about what makes an expert expert. How would you define an expert?
Pattern recognition over time? I don't know.
The least it takes for your brain to find the optimum solution to a complex problem, the more expert you are in this. So there is this research for stock market people in the stock market, and what they found out is that when these experts make decisions under pressure, thinking less, feeling more, the decisions were more accurate.
Probably like professional athletes.
Absolutely.
That, what you just described, is the whole plot line to the new Top Gun movie. You know that, right? Tom Cruise says over and over again, don't think, don't think, over
That's
and over.
That's perfect. What did we say the brain is about? What is it for?
Movement.
Absolutely.
Movement. All right, go ahead.
We got another question.
Thank you for coming to USA. Don't forget to go to some nude bars here so that you can compare.
Speak up a little bit there.
From Europe. So okay. So my question is about meditation.
Okay.
So you said that our brain its frequency is about 11 million.
11 million bits of information enter the brain from our senses.
Okay. So when we do meditation, at that time, I have two questions then.
Yes.
So
only?
So when we do meditation, we are usually, in present mind only. So what's the percentage? Is it 99? Otherwise, it's 99 and 1, right?
Conscious, unconscious?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So what's the percentage? Number one, the question. Number two, what's the frequency of how much information it's processing during meditation?
So this is actually, there were studies that trying to establish the information process wavelength or capacity of conscious versus unconscious. And and this was a little bit studies based on mostly how many numbers you can hold in your conscious mind and deal with these numbers or bits of information. And this is the research that found out that 2 to 60 bits of information per second, and this is very interesting, with it seems an upper limit of 120 bits per second. That's your conscious mind kind of capacity to process information. And if you start understanding how the information flows from your senses to your inner brain and then emerges in your consciousness and then it is externalized as a behavior, this starts making a lot of sense. Actually, we would all be dead if our survival depended on this conscious understanding of reality. We would die. Because do you remember how many points my eyes went in a second? 5. Yes, 5. Okay, while you were focused on me, I hope you were focused on me. Maybe on this guy as well. Okay, human as well. Okay, sorry. You're sitting a little bit farther away. So, evolutionary speaking, we would all be dead if conscious mind was in control. We would all be dead. It doesn't have the speed or the capacity to receive the amount of information that it's needed in order for me to avoid, let's say, a snake, or evolutionary speaking, or a wolf attacking me.
But isn't it also good to stay calm under pressure as well?
So I think this is a myth. So I just mentioned a study that showed that very experienced stockbrokers perform better when they feel more. And if they try, because what is an emotion? An emotion is a brain state that tries to make sense of what's happening in the world, what is needed from you, and then to prepare for action.
I see.
And it's very fast, and it's very deep, and it's very basic for who we are. When thinking comes in, this is already too late and too little.
So
now,
basically keep procrastinating.
Yeah, and freak out.
Done.
There is research showing that the more you procrastinate, the more innovative you might be. So,
go ahead, sir.
So, Doctor, thank you for coming. I am an economist, but don't.
But the good ones.
But I am very interested in the 11 million versus the amount available to the
2 to 60 bits, yes.
And the things that impact it. We talk about the environment. We talk about intuition. Many people they'll report that when they're on psychedelics, they're seeing more or they're experiencing more. Are they really, or are they hallucinating?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How many here have such an experience? Okay.
How many don't want to raise their hand?
My first time in the US, so I don't have such an experience.
I was stretching.
But if you have some on you, my try. Okay. So psychedelics have this function of putting down some barriers in how the brain normally processes information. So you remember the thalamus, the chamber? So visual information comes in, and the thalamus is kind of organizing it, containing it, making decisions upon it, redistributing it all around the brain where it's needed in order then to prepare for an action. Of course, the conscious mind comes later online to help execute. It doesn't take a decision. Your decisions are taken by the unconscious. Okay? So the conscious is there to execute better, not to give the overall direction, but to make the journey more. So psychedelics, some research has found that they interfere with the thalamus, which is kind of central organizer. So instead of stimuli, visual, auditory, to be processed, categorized, and redistributed, it kinds of closing it down. So there's an explosion of sensory information within the brain. So we see things that are not there, we hear things that are not there. And we have this wonderful, not me, but we have this wonderful experience of sensory experience because the brain does not do the organized flow of information and redistribution that it should. Actually, schizophrenia is very similar. No?
So there's order and chaos, I guess.
Right. There is, at least there is, first of all, chaos theory has some order in it, right? So chaos is not completely unorganized
Is
system.
this why you like death metal music?
Right, yes, I sleep with death metal, it's
Okay,
true, yeah.
that sounds terrible. But okay.
All right, let's.
So,
let's
doctor,
yeah.
question for you. You talked about suppression.
Yes.
You talked about the subconscious.
Yes.
We all watched COVID, and we watched introverts, because of the masks or whatever, come out. I mean, I watched individuals that would never be voiceive ever started to become very voiceive, very strong, and very opinionated, which you never saw. So is this behind the mask? They feel comfortable? Is this a subconscious pain? What is this? It almost gave people a freedom to have a voice. That's what COVID saw in me.
Thank you. So unconscious, right? From today, you drop the word subconscious, and it's only unconscious. Okay, so, something that I really wanted to mention today, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. And please, if you remember one thing, remember this: your brain loves you. Your brain absolutely loves you. Even when the brain leads the whole system to do something very bad, it does it because it feels that this is the best way forward. Okay? So if you think that if you believe and you experience this love with your brain, then you see that your behavior is the best possible behavior that the brain believes that at that moment deals better with the challenges you live. It might be completely wrong, and it is in some moments. But generally speaking, your brain loves you.
How do we know when to trust our brain?
First of all, you are your brain, right?
Okay.
There is no you outside of your brain. Because, for example, this is fascinating. Do you know that how long does it take for a thought to come in your conscious mind? Did you ever think how a thought is created? That's amazing. Where do thoughts come from? You have a thought. What is Niko talking about? I hope not. But where did this come from? Out of thin air?
Right? It's light that gets translated into electric energy.
So actually, exactly. So actually, there is processing in the brain, and the processing produces what you call a thought. And we study this process called thought entry. There is a process by which the brain figures out something, and it uses the mind as it uses all the other systems, because the mind is a subsystem of the brain. So actually the brain has to use all its resources, or its tools, or its weapons in order to achieve what it's trying to do. One of these is what we call the mind. It's one of the tools that the brain has in order to achieve its goals, right? So what happens out there comes in, is processed, and then it produces many cascading responses, one of which is the mind. So the mind, you have to think of the mind as another tool that your brain has to deal with the challenges in your life. So in the pandemic and in other situations of extreme pressure and extreme stress and anxiety, the brain has specific protocols to run to deal with the situation. And maybe, and this is why I said before the distance between the desired and the current. When the brain understands that there's a big difference between, for example, safety, feeling safe, understanding that I can survive, and what actually it sees, fear, especially fear and some anxiety, is the natural, I would say welcome reaction of the brain to figure out, to put the gear on the highest, it can in order to help you.
So maybe if we focus on our breathing, we could kind of get that more in line, right?
Absolutely, and there are many ways. You can focus on your breathing. You mentioned meditation, right? There are many ways that also science and experts can help us help our brain to deal better with the challenges we face. So here in the pandemic is fantastic. The case study of the pandemic is fantastic. When your brain deals with a situation that it is new and it's so important, it is so stressful.
Dr. Niko, I'm sorry to tell us a little bit more about wellbeing.ai, because we're about to wrap up here.
We're about to wrap up.
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
Just warmed up.
Wait.
Come on.
I just want to, before,
we got more
yeah, no, we have time. Dr. Niko is going to be
Thank
here.
you for your reaction. You were fantastic. Thank you. This was the best. Did you see? Amazing.
Dr.
Yes, right.
Dr. Niko's going to hang out, and he's gonna talk to you one-on-one. So yeah, we've got time. Yeah. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah.
Please.
Dr. Niko, thank you so much. Nick, Coleman.
Thank you.
to bring us here today. I'm really enjoying the whole conversation. It's amazing. Brain is amazing. Thank you for telling us about it. You mentioned an incident.
And the vagus nerve, yeah. Okay. Not to be exclusive of the total nervous system.
Of course, thanks everyone. You mentioned in an incident when you woke up, the first thing you asked
How are you?
was a social.
Yes.
So I want to go back to that.
Bravo.
We talked about social media. We said, hey, social media and the problems and stuff. And also, I've heard that a person can hold only 150 connections in their brain.
The Dunbar number. This is how it's called.
Is it what it is? I'm not sure exact number, but you're the master here. I wanted to know if there's a correlation between meeting someone in person, right, and using our sensories instead of being on the phone.
Thank you for your question. So the brain connects with a problem or with a challenge, connects better, works better, and retains information better from the real world. Real book, by the way. You gave me the opportunity. So we know from a multiple number of studies that you have better memory, better connection, and better decision making with the real world rather than with the digital world. Not that the digital world doesn't have a huge effect, of course, but when you read a book, I don't know how controversial will be this, buy the hard copy, right? No, yes, yes,
it's profound. Right?
Yes, it's memory, everything, because we live in a. I mean, the brain has developed and evolved in a real world, right? So it's very important to have this connection with the real world. Now, the problem with social media is that it took the social part of the brain. By the way, we have social brains. What makes our brain what they are, it's social connectivity. It looks like the brain is for our internal, individual, personal thinking, because thinking belongs to us. You maybe not know what I'm thinking now, but it's all good. Fantastic. Okay, so it looks like we live individual worlds, but actually the brain is a social organ. It's an absolutely social organ. So social media was a fantastic enabler, but also drug for the brain. This is why we are so absolutely mesmerized, because it really tickles the main purpose of having the brain, which is social movement, but social movement. So I'm a very big proponent of using social media, of being there. It's a tool, but I think we are, and we were discussing this before, I think we are a little bit before regulating the right amount, okay? Because there is Jonathan Haidt studies also that I mentioned before that show that especially in younger people, there is a connection between using social media the most and some negative behaviors like self-harming or even suicide. So we need to be very, very careful. But it proves how social is our brain. So the Dunbar number you mentioned, 150, have you heard of this? Yeah. So actually our brains can socially interact and connect deeper with a certain amount of social number, so people that we can connect to. So it starts with 5 and then it's times 3. So your closest number of people that your brain can maintain the deepest relationships is 5 people. Start counting mentally. Who are your 5 people? Then times 3, 15. Right? Yes. Right. Times 3, 15. Yeah, you don't take it. 15 times 3, it's 50, and times 3 is 150. There is some new research that shows that social media can push it a little bit further up, maybe because we have more opportunities, but it's around there. We have biologically set up a margin of movement with our social connections. But I'm a big supporter of the social brain theory. What makes our brains what they are is actually our social connectivity. And you can very easily test this. What is the worst punishment while you are already in a jail? You're already there. Because that's the worst thing you can do for your brain.
Well, okay, let me ask you a quick question about that. In California, we had an 18-month lockdown. So there was no church, there were no gyms, you legally couldn't get a haircut for 18 months. Do you think the damage of 18 months of isolation was, do you think they went too far with those rules? Do you think they went past the amount they should have gone?
It's very difficult to get into, and that's what our brain does, empathy. Empathy doesn't mean sympathy.
What is empathy? Can you
So
define
there are 3 types of empathy with 3 different neural networks each. There is cognitive empathy, stepping into your shoes, mentally trying to understand how you think and how you feel. So it's a kind of a thinking exercise. Hey, what Nick would say if I said this, if he said this? We can go up to 6 degrees of playing this game. So there is cognitive empathy, or if you call it analytical empathy. There is affective or emotional empathy. If you cry, I cry automatically. So there is no thinking involved. It's just a sharing of emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, and there is then behavioral empathy, which is if I go down the street and I see somebody falling down, I don't think, I don't feel, I just go to help them. So this automatic response to help somebody is also called behavioral empathy, right? So empathy is what I think is mostly our brain about. Empathy is it's deeply hardwired in our brain, and it is actually what makes humans human.
So it's not a social construct, it's internal.
It's absolutely internal. It's absolutely hardwired. We have different types of empathy. They do different things. For example, in which of the 3 types? Test question, okay, ready? Ready, let's see how many, okay. So 3 types of empathy, right? Thinking empathy, feeling empathy, or emotional empathy, and behavioral empathy, immediate reaction. Which of the 3 psychopaths are fantastic on? In which of the 3 psychopaths excel? Absolutely thinking. Because thinking requires you to stop, not to emotionally connect, and try to analyze all data in order to predict some behavior, and then you try to apply yourself in that behavior. So I think that humans are the empathic species, right? We have these 3 levels of empathy, which is quite unique, and they all fit in each other and make us quite unique. So what makes us human is not thinking. What is thinking for? That's the right question.
Movement. All right, listen, we have room for two more questions, so
and then,
go ahead.
We get time.
And then over there, yeah.
Okay, so Niko, thank you so much for sharing your
knowledge,
your wisdom and your experience and knowledge. I feel like so much of this comes from the Mediterranean, where it's the cradle of civilization. So my question is about another cradle of civilization, which is India.
Fantastic.
So I have 2 questions. So one is that, do you feel that in history, looking back over time, there was a time where man and woman were able to tap into a greater component of their mind and brain connection? Because there seems to have been a higher consciousness if you look back in the older civilizations. And second of all, as we only use a small percentage of our mind out of our brain, how does this tie into the greater quantum energy of the universe? And can you comment on that?
Right. So I will start writing a new book based on the 2 questions. Fantastic questions. Okay, so you've heard about left and right hemispheres in the brain? So there was an old idea that, for example, science lived on the left and art lived on the right, which is not true. Now we know this is not the kind of separation that the 2 hemispheres do. But still, they do things differently. But it's not what they do, it's how they do it. How the brain perceives information and makes reality. For example, the left brain perceptual system, because you have to think in terms of perception, not of action. So the left brain perceptual system builds a model of reality which is analytical, small bits of information connected to create the whole. While the right hemisphere connects immediately with the whole and cannot so much separate the little. So there were periods in time. It's called Ian McGilchrist. He's a psychiatrist from the UK. He studied this back in history. So he went through the human history, trying to understand which of the 2 perceptual systems, the right, which is holistic, you take all in. By the way, the right hemisphere perceptual system likes nature. The left doesn't like nature. Why do you think? Yeah, the left perceptual system hates nature, and it's not very good with people as well. Why the left perceptual system doesn't like nature or humans? What is nature and humans? Different than a technological system. What is the difference between the 2? Bravo, unpredictability. Because the left perceptual system is about building from scratch connecting the dots between the parts to understand and predict and create comfort. So it's a great system. We need the system. But the system that really connects us and in a gestalt way receives the whole environment, that connects with this and loves people and loves nature, etc., is the right perceptual system. And Michael Grijs looked at the human history and he tried to understand different periods of human history, which of the two perceptual systems was on top, the master, and which one was following the emissary. So, fantastic book. It's very big, looking back in history. So actually, one of the things that he points out is that in these ancient civilizations, you said, not en masse, because these ancient civilizations also had different phases, but there were phases that it was clear that the right hemisphere, which is the holistic, more the emotional empathy.
Abstract or no?
No. It's abstraction is the left.
Okay.
The left has to have it doesn't connect with nature and with reality because it cannot control it. So it creates an abstract model that looks more.
Brain wants control then.
Absolutely. The left hemisphere likes control, predictability, different parts that it can connect or analyze, the system analysis, while the right one does the synthesis.
That's a perfect segue into telling us a little bit about wellbeing.ai. So
Okay.
Kind of.
No, it's fascinating. Thank you so much.
So tell me, what are you guys working on? What are the problems you're solving and for who?
Okay. Come later for the next part of the question. Where are you? Yes. Yeah. So, okay, more or less. Okay, quantum energy. Okay.
By the way, he's around. You guys can talk to him one-on-one all night, okay? I just want to let you know. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Mediterranean. I like to talk, so be careful. As you already realized. So the last 2 years, actually, from the pandemic, this is really a story that makes me so emotional and so committed. So I have this experience spanning more than a decade in using this technology for understanding the 99% rather than the 1% of our decision-making process. And I have been using this technology and methods mainly in communications, marketing, creating experiences, okay, all this. But in the pandemic, when we were all locked in and we could not communicate, I realized that organizations, companies, which is how we live our lives, like within companies, within organized units that produce something or service people, I realized that looking at the psychological effects of the lockdown, I don't know how you were feeling during the lockdowns, but there was a lot of emotional and mental health issues.
Yeah.
From people working from afar, Zoom, and all these technologies. I realized that if I don't have you next to me to see, hey, Nick is not feeling very well, we work all day, he's a little bit down, and then to connect with Nick, listen to Nick, and try to together empathetically to solve whatever problem. Now, you're in a screen, I'm in a screen. And then I realized that this kind of a working setup did not allow for this rich information, empathetically, that our brain absorbs in order to cater and connect with you. Because we're in front of a screen, and what does our brain do when I see myself in front of a screen? I try to be proper, like in a picture, right? Because I see myself there, so I cannot relax down, eat something. I have to perform like in front of a camera. And this creates a lot of stress, by the way, in the brain, a lot of stress. So I said, okay, I'm using all these tools for so many years, 8,000 brains, to help brands and companies create better products, services, and experiences. But this technology can help us understand better ourselves in the working environment. So inside the company, not outside the company.
So you mean like avoid burnout? And
absolutely. So what was the psychological and emotional and mental state? Actually, lately we don't call it psychological states. We're more specific. We say mental or emotional states, right? So mental and emotional states. And how I can be helped through these applied neuroscience tools to understand myself, what it goes through better, plus my team, and then help practically solve issues before they become so big that cannot be solved, or they require more prediction. Right. Okay. So back then I developed this idea, if you want, for a startup that would use mostly your laptop, initially camera, microphone, but also other devices around. And maybe we can go to the third slide. I don't know if we can, yes, skip. Yes, it can move. Yes, that's right. Thank you. So how can we use technology to help us understand better our mental and emotional states while we work? Because if you feel burnout, it's already too late.
Yeah.
When something becomes consciously experienced, usually it's too strong.
Yeah.
So we have to capture it earlier. Okay? Like you feel fine, you go for a checkup in your cardiologist, you feel okay, and the cardiologist says, I see some, maybe early signs of myocarditis. Now, you never felt it, but it's there. And if you feel it, it's already
too late.
So the same happens for your brain and what the brain does, which is it receives stimuli, processes it, and creates a behavior. Right? So by the sheer motivation to utilize my knowledge and the tools of applied neuroscience to help people in the situation of the pandemic to understand better what is going through, what their brain goes through, and help them before this becomes, a point of no return, it gave birth to well-being. Back then, I connected with a fantastic team in Belgium, in Brussels.
Yeah.
And together we created a startup that is called wellbeing.ai. And here is my partner and CEO, Laurent. Thank you so much. Who so amazingly believed in the idea, and by the way, sponsored my trip here today, so thank you so much.
So, how many days are you in town?
We are going to do the conscious conversation.
So I think that was for Dr. Niko, right?
Yeah, Dr. Niko.
Another one?
No, hold on one second. Dr. Niko, how many days are you in town?
Unfortunately, I leave on Thursday morning.
And how busy are you between now and Thursday, in case anybody wants to get together with you and fun?
Open 24 hours.
Oh, you're open 24 hours?
2 days, I will recover afterwards, right?
Yeah, so sleep. And you're staying locally? You're in Mountain View?
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, do you want to close us out?
First, we want to do conscious conversations with Jules, which is the
best
coolest
part.
part of the
I
show.
love this part.
Okay.
Conscious conversation.
Jules, you want to share a little bit about what conscious conversations is?
Yes.
Conscious, unconscious.
Nikos, I think I can speak for us all by saying that this was insanely fascinating. Thank you so much for being here. This is fantastic. I have like a million more questions for you. I'll DM you later. So lots of talk tonight about the brain being a social organ, which I think will help us kind of prioritize our life in the future to have a happier brain. Now knowing that our brains are social organs, we can prioritize relationships and we can prioritize social interactions. That is a very important data point. What's just as important as that are the quality of our relationships and how to make them even better. And that's where I come in. So a few years ago, I had the idea to create a simple game that anybody can use to create better relationships in their own life. Not sure how many of you know this, but there was a study done years ago that asked that very question. How do we create deeper relationships and more meaningful relationships? It's something that we all want. It's something that we all crave. And the number one answer, anybody want to take a guess real quick?
Honesty?
That's part of, yeah, absolutely. Looking for a more niche word. All of the above, but the main thing is vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
That was the number one quality for if a relationship was going to be high quality or not. Vulnerability. Something that scares the shit out of all of us, am I right?
Fantastic.
But here's the thing, is that the more vulnerable we get with each other and the more we're seen, and we can also see others on that same level, like how good does it feel to be seen by someone?
Yeah.
Right? And how good does it feel to see someone else, to allow them the same gift? It feels amazing. Okay, I'm taking up too much time.
No, you're doing great. This is brilliant.
However, so that brings me to this. This is a creation that I had made a few years ago. It's a very simple icebreaker game, but in my opinion, it's one of the deepest ones on the market. So this is Conscious Conversations. It was a brainchild of mine. It came through a very crazy dark night of the soul that I had a few years ago. And I was like, how do I find happiness? And it was right in front of me, staring me in the face. Open up to my friends, be vulnerable, share your stuff with each other, and support each other through everything, right? That's how it's created. So Nick invited me on here because he's so fantastic and he's a very big fan of this creation. And it's a nice way to get to know the person that's being interviewed beyond what beyond what they do for a living. We get to know the person a little bit. So I already have a couple of pre-pricked questions. They're on the top. And this, all of us can answer, all of you guys can answer. So if you could speak with your younger self, what would you tell them?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. If you could speak with your younger self, what would you tell them?
Let's just have Dr. Niko answer. Go ahead.
So there was a Bruce Willis movie that he met his younger self. He was a child. And it's based actually in a book by, now I can't remember the author, but it's the same one that did Jonathan Siegel. Siegel Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
So, Richard Bach. He also wrote the book, I think it's called One, that the movie was, which was fantastic. So, I think that it's a great question that requires a lot of thinking, but maybe less thinking and more emotions first before doing. I always had this thirst. I don't know how can I, you see, words are not there that can express everything that happens in our brain. Actually, they don't. But I always had this fascination and inner pain. By the way, pain is the best motivator in life. Pain is the biggest motivator. We have, it's called emotional lift. Anyway, catch me later. So why we do what we do? How do we behave? I remember myself 13, 14, trying to read psychological or pseudo-psychological books, whatever I could get my hands on to understand better and deeper what makes us human. Sometimes through religion, sometimes out of religion, sometimes through psychology, sometimes through self-help books, sometimes, of course, being Mediterranean, this included a lot of social interaction because it was always, I remember when I first met my wife, who is from Serbia, I said, you Greeks are crazy. I said, why? She says, because when you stay 3 o'clock in the morning up, it's to philosophically debate human nature. Especially when you get drunk. Well, every other nation, when they get drunk, they do other stuff. So, okay, I'm sorry. But this is, it's part of the DNA, I guess. So like, okay, part of the problem.
So what would you say to your younger self?
So I would say thank you for having this question so early on and this pain as an internal motivation to connect and deep. So I would say a very big thank you for having this urge because it led me where I am today.
That's beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, great.
This is the first time.
All right, listen. Close us out. By the way, anyone who wants to have dinner here, you get 10% off at the restaurant.
Very cool. Thank
Go
you
ahead.
Also, do want to do another quick shout out to Primero Negocios, which handles our marketing. They help you get local customers. That's primeronegocios.com. You can talk to Arturo about that as well. And just want to say we're so grateful to have everybody here. Thank you, Dr. Niko.
Yes,
wonderful job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for more Best Brains in Debate. Until then, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, hey.
No, come on.
Great job, buddy.